Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 456, Slacking Calm. The episode begins with Ash and the gang making their way down a pathway towards the Indigo Plateau for the Grand Festival that May was going to be participating in. Ash was planning on training while at the Indigo Plateau for his battle with Brandon, while May was planning to win the Grand Festival. Although, Max reminded May that it would be a very tough competition that she would have to endure, but May was confident that she could win since she had 5 ribbons, and if you needed 5 ribbons to qualify to enter, that also meant you were qualified to win. Basically, if everyone else there had done what she had done, it should really just be an equal shot between everyone participating. While May decided to pull out her ribbon case and admire it, suddenly, Ash and the gang hear someone calling out from behind them. A man was calling out to a group of Apom that were running off with his watering can and berries. They saw the Apom carrying these things first. There was a whole bunch of them. And then they saw the man coming after them. But before they could focus in on the man, some of the Apom jumped on Ash and the gang's heads, including an Apom who jumped on May's head and took her ribbon case with its tail, and another one that threw the watering can out of its own hands and took Ash's hat instead, before leaving, obviously, with the other Apom. Ash and May were so startled at first that they couldn't do anything, but eventually they tried to go after the Apom, yelling for them to come back with their shit, but they were already gone, having walked off into the bushes, leaving May and Ash extremely worried about their items, especially May, because of her 5 ribbons were gone and she couldn't enter the Grand Festival. Just then, the man who was chasing after the Apom arrives and picks up his watering can, glad to have it, as he takes Ash and the gang to his lodge that was kind of like a little miniature farmhouse, so that he could explain to them about the Apom's behavior. And the man, being a nice old guy, introduces himself as Taylor and treats Ash and the gang to some hot drinks and Pikachu some Pokemon food. Taylor also reveals that he grows berries and makes them into Pokeblocks to sell. Selling Pokeblocks was essentially his way of making money. In fact, he was about to make some Pokeblocks from the berries that the Apom stole from him, and that's why he was so desperate to chase after them and get the berries back. Ash and the gang then introduced themselves as well, and Ash asks about why the Apom had been taking shit, which led Taylor to explain that the Apom were part of a group of Pokemon that lived in the mountains, and he specified that usually they would only take berries from him when they were hungry as fuck, but lately, however, they had been taking every single berry he had, and they've been taking them for no purpose. Basically, he understood when they took them originally because they would only do it a little bit, and it must have been when they were starving, but now there was no way they could have been starving due to the pure frequency of the berries getting taken by them. Ash was in disbelief that all of Taylor's crops were actually gone, and Taylor envisioned this in his head. May and Max were concerned for Taylor, as was Brock. Although Taylor confirmed that, to make matters worse, it wasn't just the Apom that were stealing the berries, but also Vigoroth, Mankey, and Slacking as well. Ash, always wanting to take the side of Pokemon, asked Taylor if he was positive the Pokemon stealing his shit actually had food, and Taylor was almost positive that the Pokemon must have had access to food, as he told a story through a flashback of a traveler who got lost on the mountain roads nearby, and eventually saw a wooden gate. He went to the wooden gate, hoping to, get back to civilization through it, but instead, all he saw when he went through the gate was a gigantic monster, and he became so terrified that he ran away. In the flashback, all that could be seen of this monster was just a weird, gigantic shadow. When the flashback ended, Taylor admitted that he wasn't positive if the monster was involved with all the Pokemon taking his berries or not, but he didn't know what else could be the reason. He figured that maybe the monster was ordering the Pokemon to bring the food or some shit. Ash and the gang suggested, though, that they might as well head up the mountain where the monster had been spotted to uncover the mystery, and Taylor agreed to come with them, because he wanted to see the monster for himself to see if it was real, and get his berries back, if possible. And of course, May and Ash wanted to get back their ribbon case and hat, respectively. So, Ash and the gang and Taylor sat up, determined, and headed off to the mountain. Meanwhile, we then see Meowth and Wobbuffet in front of a little gate fence thing, perhaps the same gate and fence from the flashback. Why were Meowth and Wobbuffet there, you may ask? Well, they were disguised in some classical outfits of some sort, with Meowth wearing a pair of Gita, making a clacking sound, while Wobbuffet had on a red and white hakama, basically some traditional Japanese clothing, I'm pretty sure. Meowth and Wobbuffet proceeded to instruct the Apom, including the one with Ash's hat and the one with May's ribbon case, to give all the stuff that they had collected to them so they could give it to the king, whoever this fucking king was. All the Apom were so enamored by Wobbuffet and Meowth's presence for some reason that they were too busy bowing to them to actually give the items. So Meowth turned around angrily and demanded the items. So all the Apom handed over all the berries and the ribbon case. Although the Apom with Ash's hat kept Ash's hat. Right as Meowth thanked the Apom for their work, he directed their attention to the fenced gate as it opened up to reveal the monster from the flashback, or at least the same silhouette from the flashback, as it roared very loudly, scaring off the Apom as they ran away in fear, scattering around. Suddenly, Meowth and Wobbuffet were pulled inside by the silhouette, and the doors shut. Meowth and Wobbuffet were then placed right where Jessie and James were, and they examined everything the Apom had brought, amazed by the batch of berries they now had, as Jessie and James excitedly planned to sell them as Pokeblocks at the Grand Festival. However, James spotted May's ribbon case, which Jessie grabbed excitedly, having an intention with it. She then hugged it excitedly when she opened it to find 5 ribbons inside, claiming that now she could actually enter the Grand Festival. She went on and on about how not only was she going to enter, but she was going to win the Grand Festival as well, leaving Meowth and James shocked by Jessie's determination after her miserable loss in her last contest, while Wobbuffet simply called out its name, wanting to get involved in the whole conversation. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, they were now walking towards the mountain, with Taylor leading the way and explaining how they were going to get to the mountain. Eventually, while walking, Ash and the gang and Taylor came across some Mankey who were running along their path, carrying more berries that they had just stolen. Since Taylor confirmed that he had been trying to grow more produce, but even the new shit was being stolen, and this was just another case of this. So, Ash and the gang and Taylor decided to follow the Mankey. Eventually, after following the Mankey, Ash and the gang were led to a bush, where they observed the Mankey having arrived by some Vigoroth and Slacking, and more Aipom. All of these Pokemon were excitedly giving more berries to Meowth and Wobbuffet, still disguised back in the position they were in before. As Ash and the gang observed further, they spotted the Aipom that took Ash's hat, with May being the first one to take notice of this. However, they quickly made sure not to make too much noise, going as deep down in the bushes as they could, as Meowth and Wobbuffet started to chant, just like they had before, because this chanting was signifying that it was time for the monster, or the silhouette rather, to come out. So the doors opened once again on the gate, and the monster stepped out, frightening all of the Pokemon away, just like before, like what happened with the Aipom. And also once again, Meowth and Wobbuffet were pulled in to the gate. Brock, Max, Ash, and Taylor were weirded out by the chanting that Meowth and Wobbuffet had done, and also how big the monster silhouette was, although May didn't have that on her mind. She saw that the doors were closing on the gate, and before they did, she quickly ran in, determined to see if her badge case was on the other side of the gate, since all the berries had been taken there. Not wanting May to go in alone, Taylor, Max, Ash, and Brock followed her, and the five of them barely made it inside the gate. Since it was such a close call, Ash and the gang and Taylor were screaming, and Meowth and Wobbuffet heard the screaming and were startled by it, calling over Jesse and James. Team Rocket, of course, saw Jesse and James, and May questioned them, Meowth and Wobbuffet, about what they had done with their badge case, coming to the conclusion that they were the ones who really wanted all the berries and other shit, and she demanded her badge case back. While Max and Taylor scolded Team Rocket for stealing the berries, Jamie and Jesse just taunted Ash and the gang and Taylor, saying that they wouldn't get back anything, especially Jesse, in terms of May's ribbon case, since Jesse was going to use all 5 of May's ribbons to win the Grand Festival, and was very delighted to know that the ribbon case had been May's this whole time, because she could get revenge on May for May defeating her in the last contest, and she tauntingly took out all 5 of May's ribbons and held them out, which made May immensely angry with Team Rocket. Ash got angry with Team Rocket too, questioning why the fuck they even wanted the berries in the first place, leading Meowth to explain that they didn't need the berries, they were instead just serving the Mountain King, and whatever this Mountain King wanted. Meowth called for the Mountain King to introduce himself, so he stepped out of his silhouette, fully revealing that the monster from the flashback and the monster now was the Mountain King, a gigantic Slacking. Ash and the gang were instantly frightened by its size, but they were even more frightened when Slacking started to stomp on the ground, showing off its might, causing tremors on the goddamn ground. Meowth and Wobbuffet and Jesse and James, on the other hand, though, were not frightened at all. They were amazed by the dominance that the huge Slacking was showing. A variety of Pokemon who gave the berries to the Slacking were alerted by all the stomping, assuming that it was a call, so they returned to the giant Slacking, and they were startled to see it stomping so much. Like, they were not used to this. It was usually pretty quiet and contained in its own little area. It rarely came out. Just then, though, the gigantic Slacking roared, and Meowth translated to all the Pokemon that gave the berries that their king, the Slacking, wanted to have all the Pokemon work together to help him get rid of Ash and the gang. So, the variety of Pokemon who gave the berries opened up the gate doors, and they obeyed what they believed was the gigantic Slacking's orders, according to Meowth, attacking Ash and the gang. Even the Aipom with Ash's hat was attacking. However, before any of the Pokemon could actually administer any attacks, Ash and the gang and Taylor ran the fuck away from all of the Pokemon as the Pokemon gave chase, leaving Team Rocket alone, really hoping that the Pokemon would be successful in dealing with Ash and the gang and Taylor so that they would never have to deal with them fucking with their plans again. And Team Rocket cheered at this, hoping that this would happen. Ash and the gang believed that they were making good progress, because they were running quite far, and they didn't see any of the Pokemon, but they were startled when the Pokemon formed blockades, essentially circling Ash and the gang and Taylor, trapping them in, and preventing them from escaping anywhere. They were trapped in one spot. Ash quickly had Pikachu jump off his shoulder and use a Thunderbolt aimed at the ground as a little warning shot, basically telling the Pokemon to get the fuck away and frighten them and all that, and sure enough, this manages to scare the Pokemon off. Not to the point where they leave or anything, but to the point where they all scatter and they're no longer circling Ash and the gang and Taylor, so Ash and the gang and Taylor were able to escape, with Taylor suggesting they split up, so it would be harder for the Pokemon to catch all of them if they eventually reconvened. So Taylor went down one road with May and Max, while Ash, Brock, and Pikachu went in the opposite direction. Sure enough, the Pokemon were able to reconvene, and they also split up, with all the Aipom, including the one with Ash's hat, going after Ash and Brock and Pikachu, while the rest of the Pokemon went after Taylor, May, and Max. As Brock, Pikachu, and Ash were running down their path, they saw the Aipom following them, so Brock came up with an idea to distract the Aipom, pulling out some Pokemon food from his backpack and dropping it on the ground, which does in fact occupy the majority of the Aipom, stopping them in their tracks so they could eat. But that was with the exception of the Aipom with Ash's hat, who continued to chase after Ash, Brock, and Pikachu, doing some parkour-esque jumps across some trees to catch up to Ash and Brock, who were getting ahead of it. Ash and Brock didn't stay ahead of it for long though, nor did Pikachu, as the three of them arrived at the edge of a cliff and panicked because, they were so focused on running away from Aipom, they didn't even see the cliff edge. But since Ash, Brock, and Pikachu had stopped, this allowed the Aipom to catch up and jump on Ash's head, which in turn knocked him down a hill when he tried to get his hat back from Aipom, and Aipom refused. Basically, it was such a struggle that both of them ended up falling down the cliff hill, leaving Brock and Pikachu to watch in terror as Ash and Aipom were falling to their goddamn deaths. However, Brock advised that Ash try and grab onto something, like a branch, and thankfully there was a branch hanging off the cliff that Ash was able to grab onto, and not only that, but he held onto the tree with one hand, the tree branch with one hand, and saved Aipom from falling, grabbing Aipom's hand with his other hand. Ash then struggled when he tried his best to pull Aipom up to him, and as a result, he put so much pressure on his other arm that the tree branch ended up breaking, and this caused Ash and Aipom to fall to their deaths once again. But they actually didn't die, they just fell on a very thick bush, which cushioned their fall, thankfully. When Ash and Aipom got up, though, Ash noticed that Aipom had dropped his hat, and it went flying past the bush, so Ash immediately ran to go after it, but Aipom did as well, and was faster, and got his hat first, placing it atop its head once more. Ash really wanted his hat back, but the Aipom would not give it over. He was worried that Aipom was going to run away with it again, but much to his surprise, Aipom just smiled and stared lovingly at Ash, leading Ash to realize that after he had saved it from the fall, Aipom had actually taken a liking to Ash now, but it had also taken a liking to his hat, so just because it liked Ash enough to stay by him now, it still wasn't going to give his hat back. Meanwhile, the other Pokemon, the Mankey, Slacking, and Vigoroth, were still giving chase to May, Max, and Taylor, but May, Max, and Taylor were able to have the Pokemon lose track of them by hiding in a bush, although they weren't content with hiding forever, because May needed to get her ribbon case back, so they would have to come out of the bushes eventually. Anyways, back to Ash and Aipom. Ash realized he was dirty from the fall and cleaned off his hands and face in a nearby river, and he also noticed that Aipom wasn't doing this because he was too busy playing with his own hat. He tried asking for the hat back, but Aipom just smiled happily and absolutely refused to give it back still, leading Ash to touch his bare head, really wishing he could have it back. Aipom still refused, so Ash decided to give up on getting his hat back for now, and instead changed the subject, telling Aipom that it should not trust Team Rocket. Suddenly, Ash heard Brock and Pikachu approaching, and turned his head to them, as Pikachu came to him first, jumping into his arms, and then Brock arrived. Catching his breath, as he revealed he had to take the long way down a hill in order to get down to Ash and Aipom. Ash and Brock then state that they should probably go back to the gate in order to try and get the fruit back from Slacking and Team Rocket, and Ash asks Aipom to come along, saying that it could keep his hat for a while if it helped them out with stopping Team Rocket and getting the berries back. Aipom, however, had different ideas, just climbing the cliff up, going back to her fellow Aipom as they continued to eat Brock's food. Ash was a bit saddened that Aipom didn't want to help him and Brock, but he simply said that they would have to go to the gate on their own and try their best to convince the Slacking that Team Rocket were essentially planning to likely steal the berries from Slacking and not let it eat them at all, because that was likely something that Team Rocket would do. Basically, Ash's master plan was to have the Slacking help them in defeating Team Rocket, and hopefully this could improve their bond with the Slacking, so it would return some of the berries to Taylor if Team Rocket hadn't eaten them already. Back with Aipom, we see that it actually was going along with what Ash wanted. The reason why it went back to the other Aipom was because it wanted to tell them about what Ash had said about not being able to trust Team Rocket, and it managed to convince them not to, and it also managed to convince all of the other Pokemon that had been going after Max, May, and Taylor, the Mankey, Vigoroth, and other Slacking, about how they shouldn't trust Team Rocket as well, when they came by, which surprised all the Pokemon. Meanwhile, inside the little gate thing, the gigantic Slacking King was eating all the berries, and very quickly finished devouring every single goddamn one. And we see that Team Rocket didn't actually want the berries for themselves. Actually, they wanted to use the Slacking as transport. They had basically made it agree that in exchange for all the berries that they were collecting for it, then Slacking would give them a lift to their next destination, so that they wouldn't have to walk all the way there. So Slacking took Team Rocket up on its shoulder, and they were about to begin their trek to Team Rocket's next destination, which, per Jessie's orders, was Indigo Plateau, where she knew the Grand Festival was taking place, since she could now partake in it, because she had May's ribbon case. However, while Jessie was excitedly cheering on the gigantic Slacking shoulder, excited for the Grand Festival, May, Max, and Taylor arrived, having climbed up over the gate using ropes, and they immediately confronted Team Rocket, demanding May's ribbon case back, as well as the berries. But Team Rocket taunt May, Max, and Taylor, saying that they would not give May's ribbon case back, as Jessie pulls out all the ribbons and taunts May with them, and they also confirm that Slacking had already ate all the berries. And Jessie tells May that if she wanted the ribbon case, then she would have to get through Slacking first. And Slacking started to move towards Max, May, and Taylor, not liking people they didn't know, intruding on his territory. So, May called out her combustion and told it to stop Slacking with a fire spin, which was heading towards Slacking while it was smacking its chest in anger. The fire spin did absolutely fucking nothing though, as Slacking just destroyed it by simply blowing a gust of wind from its massive body. Basically, it just breathed out, and this gust of wind got rid of the fire, and also destroyed the gate in the process. Slacking then carries Team Rocket on its shoulder still, as it goes past the gate towards the Indigo Plateau. But just then, Brock, Ash, and Pikachu arrived, and May, Max, and Taylor instantly filled the three of them on what had been going on, basically explaining the situation. Ash decides to stop the Slacking in its tracks to also stop Team Rocket by having Pikachu use Thunderbolt on Slacking's feet, which startled Slacking, stopping it. Team Rocket was startled too, and Slacking turned around, facing Ash, as Team Rocket did their motto, and Ash declared that He had to stop slacking from continuing on into other places, since after it had eaten all the berries, it likely had a very high energy boost. This led Jesse, James, and Meowth to retort that they would maybe try and convince Slacking to not leave the area, but only if Ash would give them Pikachu, to which Ash instantly refused. As punishment, Team Rocket told Slacking to capture one of the members of Ash in the gang. Yeah, that's right, one of them, actually. So Slacking extended its hand and grabbed May and started to climb a nearby rock. Assuming that no one else would be able to take May back and reach her up at the top of this rock, but unbeknownst to Slacking, Ash had a Swallow, who he sent out, and he told it to fly up and save May. Once Slacking reached the top of the rock with May, though, it hit Swallow, slapping it away. But in the process, Slacking had dropped May, which led Max and Brock to panic, seeing May presumably fall to her death. But luckily, Ash quickly sent out Sceptile to catch May in its arms just in time, relieving the entire gang and Taylor. Next, Swallow used an aerial ace on Slacking, knocking it and Team Rocket off of the rock as they crashed onto the ground, bringing up a whole mound of dust. May declared that she was going to get her revenge on Team Rocket for trying to capture her, as she had Combuskin use a fire spin, which burned Slacking and Team Rocket, making them scream and panic. In order to keep Team Rocket from actually dying, though, because we didn't want that happening in the Ash anime, Brock sent out his Marshtomp and had it put out the flames on Team Rocket and Slacking with a water gun. Also, because of this water gun, Slacking's real-life cover was taken off of it, revealing that it wasn't actually a real Slacking, but instead a Slacking mech that Team Rocket had designed. So that explained why Team Rocket was able to tell the Slacking to basically do whatever they wanted this whole time. And it also technically revealed that the berries weren't ate by this robot, but were instead being stored in it, so Team Rocket could sell the berries as Pokeblocks, just like they initially intended. Team Rocket then hop inside the gigantic Slacking mech, when just then, the Vigoroth, Slacking, Aipom, and Mankey all arrive, because the Aipom with Ash's hat had rallied them all together. Team Rocket mess around with the dials inside the mech, making the Slacking mech roar, trying to scare off the Aipom, Vigoroth, and Slacking and Mankey, but much to Ash and the gang's relief, they were not scared off, even as Team Rocket very determinedly continued to try to scare them off, as the Vigoroth, Slacking, and Aipom started to attack the mech. The Vigoroth were throwing some rocks, the Aipom were throwing some more large stones and punching the mech, and the Mankey were scratching the mech. Ash and gang and Taylor were very impressed by the Pokemon's strength, while Team Rocket was getting immensely frustrated, with Meowth slamming down on some of the controls, breaking them in the process. The controls being broken, along with all the attacks, soon caused the mech to start shaking, and it starts to spark as well. So, all the Pokemon quickly leave from the mech's vicinity as it explodes, and Team Rocket falls out of their mech to the ground. And all the stolen berries were removed from the mech, much to Team Rocket's frustration, and all the Pokemon and Ash and the gang's joy. With Team Rocket down, Ash and the gang then demand the berries and May's ribbon case back, but Team Rocket refused, as Jessie shows May her ribbon case once again, taunting her, saying that she would be the one to make it to the Grand Festival with her hard-earned ribbons. May yelled at Jessie for this, and tried to demand her to give back the case again, but Jessie was fed up with May's yelling, and sent out Seviper to bite Combuskin and May. But Combuskin hit Seviper first by using a quick attack. Seviper simply just went to bite for a second time, but Combuskin is able to dodge the attack and strike Seviper with a Sky Uppercut attack, sending Seviper straight into Jessie, causing her to let go of the ribbon case, allowing May to catch it, making her very relieved and happy to have it back. While Jessie and Meowth, on the other hand, were furious because Seviper had been knocked out by Combuskin by this point, so Meowth urged James to send out Cacnea to fight. James obliged, not wanting Meowth to yell at him, as he told Cacnea to use Needle Arm after Cacnea had gotten his usual hug done. But before the Needle Arm could hit, Pikachu hit Cacnea with a powerful Volt Tackle, sending Cacnea flying into Team Rocket with such force that it causes Team Rocket to go blasting off, leading Ash to hug Pikachu, congratulating him for his work, while he and the rest of the gang and Taylor celebrate Team Rocket's defeat, and Taylor also celebrates the fact that his berries were now safe. A bit later, Taylor escorts Ash and the gang back to his little lodge place, and he thanks Ash and the gang for helping him get his berries back, and they say no problem, but clarify that they had to get going now so they could head to the Grand Festival at the Indigo Plateau. So Ash and the gang took their leave, with May extremely excited to get to the Indigo Plateau, but they didn't go before saying goodbye to Taylor and all the Aipom, Mankey, Vigoroth, and Slacking, who decided to stay by Taylor and only eat berries from him when they needed to. While Ash and the gang were walking towards the Indigo Plateau, May remained excited, while Ash felt extremely uncomfortable and awkward without wearing his hat, because he realized that he let the Aipom that had it earlier still have it. However, a few minutes later, Ash and the gang see Ash's hat lying on a rock structure beside a pink flower and an apple, leading Ash to come to the conclusion that it must have been Aipom who actually did give Ash his hat back after all. Ash gladly puts his hat back on, which Pikachu remarked by purring that Ash looked way better with his hat, and Ash remarks that Aipom sure was a cool Pokemon after all, for giving back his hat, and with that, Ash and the gang continue on their journey to the Indigo Plateau, while in a nearby tree, Aipom was spying on Ash, smiling as he followed him and the gang. It seems like Aipom had taken an interest in Ash, an immense interest. Maybe it actually wanted to become his Pokemon. Will it? I guess we'll find out.